He was a 35-year-old billionaire with no heart left to give. She was just the maid, invisible in his world of glass and gold. But one night he saw her on his security camera, crying, alone, in his pool. What he did next was something no one saw coming, a story of pain, second chances, and the power of truly seeing someone. This isn't a love story. It's a story about humanity. Stay with us till the end. You won't forget what happens next. Richard Harlow wasn't just successful, he was legendary. By 35, his name was etched into the skyline of tech empires. A boy genius turned billionaire, he had sold his second startup for nearly $1 billion before he hit 30. His face had been on Forbes, his quotes in Time, but none of it filled the hollow space in his chest. After years of media storms, constant business travel, and shallow handshakes from fake friends, Richard escaped it all. He bought a futuristic mansion outside Austin, Texas, hidden behind rolling hills, gates that recognized only his voice, and walls made entirely of glass. He lived in silence now, a silence he called peace, though deep inside he knew it was something colder, lonelier. His days were measured. Wake up at 5:30, green juice, emails, weight training, code review, 2 Zoom calls, piano practice at 7, dinner alone at 8, whiskey by 9, then emptiness until dawn. He didn't speak unless required, laughed only at stock prices, cried never. Richard had no wife, no girlfriend, no exes that mattered. He hadn't hugged anyone in 4 years. He was a machine in a man's body, perfectly efficient, perfectly alone. But there was one person who entered his space every day, quietly, carefully, never noticed. Lena Matthews, 26 years old, the maid. She moved through the house like breath, gentle, invisible, always there but never seen. She wiped down surfaces he never touched, replaced towels he never noticed. She picked up the same coffee cup he left in the office every morning and smiled when no one was looking. Lena never asked questions. She never brought drama, never complained. She was just there, a living part of the house that had become a fortress around Richard's guarded heart. He didn't know where she came from, or why she seemed to flinch when he raised his voice to the Alexa speaker. He never asked. Why would he? To Richard, she was just another quiet cog in his perfectly designed world. But Lena? Lena noticed everything. She noticed how his eyes lingered too long on storm clouds through the window. She noticed the untouched birthday cake his assistant left in the fridge, year after year. She noticed how he never slept for more than 4 hours, and how sometimes he stood by the pool in silence, shirtless, not moving, like he was made of marble. Lena had her own secrets, but she had made peace with her role. Clean, smile, vanish. She couldn't afford to dream. Not anymore. Until one night, a night where silence turned into something louder than thunder. A night where Richard would truly see Lena for the first time, not as a background figure, but as a human soul in pain. And what he saw would shatter every wall he had built. Because the man who trusted no one, the man who had everything, was about to discover what it means to lose control, not to a virus, not to a hacker, but to a moment, a person, a truth. And from that moment forward, nothing would ever be the same. Midnight had come and gone, but sleep didn't visit Richard Harlow anymore. The night pressed quietly against the glass walls of his mansion, stars glowing faintly above the hills outside. His house was still, humming only with the faint rhythm of machines that never stopped working, like him. Richard sat in his dimly lit home office, a glass of untouched scotch beside his laptop, blue light flickering on his expressionless face. His eyes, weary but sharp, swept across the wall of glowing surveillance screens. Then he paused. Screen 6. The indoor pool. There was movement. His eyes narrowed. That wing of the house was supposed to be empty. He leaned forward, chest tightening with suspicion. Was it a break-in? He tapped a button and the feed zoomed in. What he saw froze the blood in his veins. Lena. She was standing at the edge of the pool, completely naked, her pale skin glowing under the soft pool lights like porcelain. But this wasn't erotic. This wasn't playful. There was no performance in her presence. Her body shook. Her arms were wrapped tightly around herself, like she was trying to hold her own soul together. And then he saw it. Tears rolling down her cheeks, fast and silent. She was crying. No weeping. And not the way people cry over movies or spilled dreams. This was the kind of cry that only came from someone who had lost everything and had no one left to tell. Richard's stomach turned. He had never seen this version of her, raw, broken, real. His first thought, automatic and cold, was, what the hell is she doing in there? Why would she? But then the words died in his throat, because her pain wasn't just visible, it was loud even through the silence. It cracked through the screen and slammed into him like thunder. She stepped slowly into the water as if the pool were a place she could disappear. Her lips moved, whispering something only she could hear. Maybe a prayer, maybe a goodbye. Then she lowered herself in, floating on her back, eyes to the ceiling, tears mixing with chlorinated water, hair spreading like ink in the blue. And Richard, the man who hadn't cried in over a decade, felt something stir inside his chest, something real, something human. He could have turned the screen off, he could have looked away, but he didn't. He watched, not out of lust, not out of curiosity, but out of a quiet, terrifying concern. He saw the way she trembled as she floated, the way her fingers moved like she was trying to hold on to the air itself, the way she looked around the pool, not like someone trying to relax, but like someone trying to decide if this world still had room for her. 20 minutes passed. 20 minutes passed. Then, as quietly as she'd come, she climbed out, her body thin and fragile under the weight of whatever demons she was carrying. She slipped her clothes back on, not even drying off completely, and walked out the door, barefoot and broken. Richard sat back slowly. His hand was clenched on the edge of the desk, knuckles white. His throat was dry. What he had just seen wasn't meant for anyone's eyes. It was a cry in the dark, one that she thought no one would ever hear. But he had. And for the first time in years, Richard Harlow didn't feel rich. He didn't feel powerful. He didn't feel in control. He felt something much more terrifying. He felt responsible. The morning sun crept into the house like it was afraid to disturb the silence. Golden light spilled across polished marble floors, catching reflections in glass cabinets and gleaming countertops. Richard Harlow sat in the kitchen, dressed unusually casual, dark jeans, a white t-shirt, barefoot, hair still damp from the shower. A mug of untouched coffee sat in front of him, steam curling upward like a question that had no answer. He wasn't checking emails, he wasn't on a call. He was waiting. For her. At exactly 7:02 a.m., the sound of soft footsteps approached, timid, careful, almost rehearsed. Lena Matthews stepped into the kitchen, her gray uniform freshly pressed, her hair tied back in a low knot, her face pale but composed. The only thing betraying her was her eyes, red, tired, hollow. Richard looked up. She froze in the doorway. "Lena," he said, voice low, not cold, not sharp, gentle. She straightened. "Yes, Mr. Harlow?" There was a long pause. "I saw you," he said softly, "last night at the pool." Her entire body tensed. The mug in her hand trembled just slightly. "I wasn't spying," he added quickly. "The cameras. They're for safety. I just happened to—" He exhaled. "I couldn't look away." Lena didn't move. She didn't run or deny it. She only lowered her gaze to the floor, cheeks flushing with a mixture of shame and panic. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I know I shouldn't have been there. I wasn't trying to do anything wrong. I needed somewhere safe." Her voice cracked on that last word. Safe. As if it were a language she hadn't spoken in years. Richard studied her, not like a boss, not like a stranger, but like someone realizing he had overlooked a burning building while living inside it. She had always been so quiet, so efficient. He'd never noticed the way she avoided sudden noises, or the way she flinched when someone walked behind her. "Why were you crying?" he asked, more softly now. Lena blinked, her mouth opening and closing like she wasn't sure which truth to reveal. A battle played across her face, fear versus courage. Eventually, courage won. "I've been sleeping in my car," she said. Her voice didn't shake now. It was flat, matter of fact, the way people speak when they're too tired to hide anymore. My ex. He was violent. He hurt me. He threatened to ruin me if I ever left. And when I finally did, I lost everything. My job, my apartment, my credit. She laughed, but it wasn't joyful. I got this job through an agency, told them I had a place to stay. I didn't. I've been using your guest shower and sleeping in the storage room when the house is quiet. Richard's jaw tightened. Lena looked at him now, eyes glistening but proud. I wasn't stealing. I never meant to deceive you. I just didn't know what else to do. He took a deep breath, trying to process the weight of her words. Why didn't you ask for help? He asked, his voice breaking its usual calm. Lena looked straight into his eyes. For the first time, she wasn't afraid. Because rich people don't help girls like me. Silence. A heavy one. The kind that feels like a verdict. She turned to leave. I understand if you want me to go. I'm sorry you had to see me like that. Lena, wait. She stopped. Richard stood up slowly, walked to her, stopping just close enough for her to feel the warmth of his presence. You don't have to leave, he said, and I'm sorry I didn't see you sooner. For a long second she didn't respond, but in her eyes, somewhere behind the exhaustion and pain, was a flicker of something he hadn't seen in anyone in years. Trust. The moment Lena left the kitchen, the air seemed colder, not because of the morning breeze brushing through the open glass panel, but because of what she had left behind in her words. Pain, naked, raw, unanswered. Richard Harlow, a man who had solved impossible code, won billion-dollar lawsuits, and crushed global competition, now sat at the kitchen island frozen, unsure what to do with the ache pulsing in his chest. He had always believed logic could solve everything, but this wasn't logic. This was something deeper, something human. He stared into the untouched coffee she had poured for him, now cold, a symbol of how long she had quietly served him, without asking for anything in return. Sleeping in her car. The words wouldn't stop echoing. She had been living under his roof, suffering in silence, while he had walked past her every single day like she was invisible. He had never once asked if she was okay. A quiet fury rose inside him, not at her, but at himself. At a world that let people like Lena disappear behind smiles and uniforms. He needed to know more. Richard picked up his phone and called someone he hadn't spoken to in months. Get me Ethan Marks, he said. Now. Ethan was a discreet private investigator he'd used during major acquisitions. Smart, fast, invisible. By noon, Richard had a manila folder in his hands. No passwords, no guesswork. Just the truth, printed in ink. He read every word, sitting in his office with trembling hands. Lena Matthews, bachelor's in marketing. Top 5% of her class. A rising star at a Dallas media firm by age 23. Then, the downward spiral. Her ex-boyfriend. His name was on the documents, her former boss. It began with office harassment. She reported it. HR promised action. Instead, they called her emotional, unstable. 1 week later, she was let go. Her reputation in the industry? Ruined. Blacklisted, silenced. Then came the threats, the stalking. Police reports were filed, but dismissed. No charges, no evidence, just her word. The system failed her. Richard clenched the report so hard the paper creased between his fingers. There were no arrests, no trials, no justice. Just Lena, trying to survive, sleeping in a car, cleaning a stranger's mansion, bathing in silence. Not a single mark on her criminal record. No history of drugs, no history of theft. Just a girl who had once dared to speak the truth and had her life destroyed for it. And she never told him, never asked for pity, never even flinched when he walked by. All those times he gave her orders without a glance. All the moments he missed, the shadows under her eyes, the way she folded into herself like she was trying to disappear. Now Richard knew the truth. He had judged her. He who preached about data and facts had made assumptions without knowing the first thing about the woman in front of him. A knot formed in his throat, one he couldn't swallow down this time. She had been drowning right next to him, and he hadn't noticed. Until last night. until she had nothing left to hide. Richard stood slowly, the file still in his hands. His reflection in the glass door stared back at him, not the billionaire, not the genius, but a man. A man who had finally learned to look beyond the surface. And now he had a decision to make. He could let her keep fading in the background, or he could step forward, offer more than money, offer a new story, because the truth behind her eyes wasn't just pain, it was strength. And he was done ignoring it. The sun had just dipped below the hills, casting soft golden shadows through the glass walls of the mansion. The silence in the house was different that evening, not heavy, but expectant, like something sacred was about to unfold. Richard Harlow stood in the hallway outside the smallest room in his 20,000-square-foot estate, the staff room, the one he'd barely noticed before, the one Lena had been sleeping in, folded up in a too-small cot surrounded by storage boxes and forgotten furniture. He raised his hand to knock, then hesitated. For a man used to boardrooms, legal negotiations, and billion-dollar buyouts, it was surreal to feel his heart thudding like a boy about to confess a crush. But this wasn't a business move. This was personal. Very personal. He knocked, softly, once. The door creaked open. Lena stood in the doorway, in a simple cotton t-shirt and leggings, her hair down for the first time he could remember. She looked young, too young to have suffered so much, yet old in her eyes. "Mr. Harlow?" she asked, voice quiet, unsure. "Just Richard tonight," he said. "Can I come in?" She stepped back without a word, eyes searching his for meaning. He entered the small room looking around, a single lamp, a half-open suitcase, a blanket rolled on a shelf. Not a home, just a hiding place. "I didn't mean to disturb you," he began, "but there's something I need to say, and something I want to give you." She tensed slightly as if expecting judgment or worse, pity. He handed her a cream-colored folder. Confused, Lena opened it slowly. Her fingers trembled as she read the top page. Her eyes widened. It was a job offer. Full-time, marketing department, salary, benefits, title. Everything she had once dreamed of. And lost. This can't be real," she whispered. "It's very real," he said, his voice low but steady. "It's yours, if you want it." "But why?" Her voice cracked. "You could hire anyone. I don't even have a current resume." "I don't care about a resume," Richard interrupted gently. "I care about what I saw last night, and what I read today, and what I know now." He stepped closer, not too close, but just enough for her to feel his sincerity. "I saw you cry," he said. "But what shook me wasn't your pain, it was your strength. You were still holding yourself together when everything else had fallen apart. You never asked for help. You kept working. You endured." She looked down, lips trembling. Her hand clutched the folder to her chest like it was made of gold. "I'm not offering this out of guilt," he continued. "I'm offering this because you deserve it. Because you were never meant to be anyone's maid. You are intelligent, creative, and stronger than most people I've met in my entire life." "But I lied," Lena said. Her voice was barely audible now. "I said I had a home. I didn't. I was living in my car. I broke into your pool. "You survived," Richard interrupted. "You did what you had to do. That's not weakness, that's courage." She couldn't speak. Her throat was too tight. The folder slipped slightly from her arms as she wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I don't understand," she finally managed to whisper. "Why me?" Richard smiled softly, a small, honest smile that she had never seen on him before. "Because for years I've been surrounded by people who smile with empty eyes, people who fake ambition, fake friendship, fake kindness. Then you came in, silent, real, broken, but not beaten." He took a step closer. "You reminded me what it means to feel something again," he said, voice catching just slightly. "And because I don't want to live in a world where someone like you has to beg to be seen." Lena's tears spilled freely now, not from sadness, but from something even rarer, hope. No one had ever said anything like that to her before, not even her parents, certainly not her ex. And now here was this man, this billionaire with marble walls and ice in his voice, melting just for her. I, I don't know what to say, she choked out. You don't have to say anything yet, he said. Just think about it. And when you're ready, you walk into that office, not as a maid, but as a woman who finally gets to take her place at the table. For the first time in what felt like years, Lena smiled. Not a practiced smile, not a polite one, a real smile. And for the first time in his life, Richard Harlow felt like he had done something that actually mattered. The glass mansion still stood just outside Austin, shimmering in the late afternoon sun like a monument to modern success. But everything inside had changed, especially her. 1 year later, Lena Matthews was no longer the quiet girl who moved like a shadow. She walked through the halls with purpose now, heels clicking, eyes focused, chin lifted. Her wardrobe no longer carried the bland gray of servitude, but the soft tones of confidence, pastels, cream, navy blue. Her long hair flowed freely, curled softly at the ends, no longer tied back like a secret. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was leading. And the department she ran, it wasn't just a job. It was her mission. Second Chance Careers, a new branch inside Richard Harlow's empire, was born from the very truth she once tried to hide, that the world forgets people in pain. Not anymore. Lena had built a team of survivors, women who had escaped violent homes, lost everything in a system that failed them, or aged out of foster care with nowhere to go. They were now graphic designers, analysts, executive assistants, project leads. Each resume she reviewed felt like a prayer answered. Each interview was a life pulled back from the edge. She wasn't saving them. She was reminding them they had never stopped being worthy. Richard Harlow had changed too, and not in ways anyone had predicted. The man once called the Iceman of Silicon Valley now sat in on weekly community grant meetings. He listened, asked questions, laughed genuinely. He now volunteered anonymously, paid rent for 3 domestic abuse shelters, and mentored youth in tech innovation from marginalized communities. But more than that, he became present. He wasn't in the headlines anymore. He didn't want to be, because for the first time, he had found something that didn't come from valuation spreadsheets or product launches. He had found meaning. Their bond, his and Lena's, never turned romantic, though many expected it might. But what they shared went deeper than infatuation. It was a bond forged in a moment of silent pain and quiet witnessing, a connection built on seeing and being seen, not with eyes, but with understanding. One quiet evening, just after sunset, they stood by the very pool where everything had changed. The water glowed softly beneath the lights, calm and quiet. Lena stood in a flowing beige blouse and slacks, arms crossed gently over her chest. Her face was peaceful, but her eyes held that old fire, the one Richard had once missed but could now never unsee. She turned toward him, her voice soft. "That night," she said, "I thought I had nothing left. I thought maybe the water would take me, or that no one would even notice if it did." Richard didn't look away. "But you saw me," she continued, her voice almost breaking, "and something in your eyes told me I wasn't invisible anymore." He nodded slowly. "I didn't just see you," he said. "I saw myself for the first time, all the walls I'd built, all the people I'd ignored. That moment changed everything." They stood in silence for a few long breaths, letting the night wrap around them like a gentle truth. Then Lena smiled, not because she needed to, but because she could. "I still can't believe all this," she said, motioning toward the house, the lights, the life she now lived. "1 year ago, I was cleaning your windows and hiding in closets. Now, I feel like I'm writing my own story again." Richard's gaze softened. "You're not writing it alone anymore," he said, "but you've always been the author." Lena's smile deepened, glowing, radiant, real. And in that stillness, in that moment of peace between two people who had nothing and everything in common, something beautiful took root. A shared legacy. A ripple turned into a wave. The kind of bond this world doesn't understand. Not romance, not charity, but redemption. Sometimes the people society overlooks are the ones who carry the most strength. And sometimes all it takes is one person choosing to see, really see, someone else to change everything. The ripples we cause through small acts of kindness and courage, they echo forever.